The table was set for 32 people. My mother had picked the restaurant herself, a private dining room at a place downtown with white tablecloths and a chandelier that looked like it was made of frozen rain. It was supposed to be a celebration. My 30th birthday. The first major milestone dinner my family had thrown for me in my entire life. I remember thinking, sitting at the head of that table in a dress I'd bought on sale, and altered myself, that maybe things were finally different. Then my husband stood up. He didn't tap his fork against his wine glass the way people do at weddings. He didn't smile. He picked up his glass, let the room settle, and said in the voice he uses when he's already decided something, "Before we do the toast, I need to share something with everyone here." My mother's smile didn't fall. It just froze, like a photo taken at the wrong moment. I'm Claire. I'm 30 years old now, though I was 29 when all of this happened. I teach 4th grade at an elementary school on the north side of Chicago. I spend my days teaching 9-year-olds how to carry numbers in long addition and why it matters to tell the truth even when it's hard. The irony of that second one took a long time to stop stinging. I grew up in a suburb 40 minutes outside the city, the older of 2 kids. My brother Marcus is 27. When we were children, I thought the difference in how my parents treated us was just a personality thing. Marcus was louder, funnier, the kind of kid who could walk into a room and make every adult in it smile without trying. I was quieter. I read a lot. I made my bed without being asked and turned my homework in early and never caused problems, which in my family meant I was easy to overlook. My mother used to say I was the responsible one, and she said it the way people say someone is sensible, like it was a compliment and an explanation at the same time. My father would ruffle my hair and say Claire doesn't need us to worry about her. And they were right. I didn't need them to worry. I just needed them to notice. When I was 24, my Aunt Rosie died. She was my mother's older sister, never married, no children, and she had spent 40 years working as an office manager for a law firm and living small and saving carefully. She left me $61,000 in a dedicated account with a note that said, "Use this for something that lasts. A house, an education, something real." She wrote my name on the paperwork herself. My parents offered to manage the account. They said it was because I was young and the financial structure was complicated and they didn't want me to make an impulsive decision. I said, okay. I said okay because in my family, saying okay was the same as breathing. You just did it. I didn't ask for statements, I didn't ask for access. I was 24 and I trusted them the way you trust the floor to hold you up, without thinking about it, because the alternative is too exhausting to consider. For 5 years, I saved on my own too. I put away money from every paycheck with the kind of discipline that my coworkers found slightly depressing. I had a number in my head, the amount I needed for a down payment on a small place, a condo maybe, something with a little outdoor space and a second bedroom I could turn into a reading room. By the time I was 29, I was close. And I knew that with Aunt Rosie's fund added in, I'd be there. That's when I asked my parents about the account. It was a Sunday afternoon in March. I drove out to their house for lunch the way I did twice a month, brought a pie from the bakery near my apartment, sat at the kitchen table where I'd done homework every night for 12 years. My mother was telling me about Marcus's new apartment. He'd just moved into a 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, the kind of neighborhood that costs what teachers make in a year, and I waited for a pause in the conversation and said, "I think I'm ready to look at the fund Aunt Rosie left me." My mother's hands went still on her coffee cup. My father looked up from his phone. There was a silence that lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it had a texture to it, thick and careful, the kind of silence that isn't empty at all. "What do you mean, look at it?" my mother asked. "The account," I said. "I want to check the balance. I'm thinking about buying." My father put his phone face down on the table. "There's no rush on that." "I know," I said, "but I'm ready." My mother smiled. "Let's not make any big decisions today. Enjoy your lunch." I didn't push. I drove home with half a pie and a feeling in my stomach I couldn't name. I called them 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each time, my father said he'd look into it. Each time, my mother redirected the conversation. Once she said the account was in a structure that needed some untangling, which was such a vague non-answer that I wrote it down afterward just because it felt significant. On the fourth call, my father said, with the quiet authority he always used when he wanted me to stop asking, "Claire, we'll handle it." I told Nathan that night. We'd been married for 2 years, by then, a small wedding, just close friends and family, no fuss, which my parents approved of because Marcus had just started a new job and they didn't want the attention split. Nathan is a forensic accountant. He looks at numbers the way other people look at faces, like there's always more information there than what's on the surface. He listened to everything I said without interrupting. Then he asked one question. "Do you have anything in writing? Any documents at all from when they took over the account?" I thought about it. There was a folder in my closet from when Aunt Rosie's estate was settled. I'd signed things without reading them because I was 24, and my father sat across the table and handed me a pen and said, "This is routine." I told Nathan about the folder. He asked to see it. I didn't sleep well that night. Nathan spent 2 evenings going through everything. He didn't tell me what he was thinking. He just asked quiet questions. What year was this? Who was the attorney? Do you remember if you signed anything else? He pulled up public records on his laptop and typed things in slowly, methodically, in the way he does everything, like he's building something and won't show you until it's finished. On the third night, he came to the kitchen where I was sitting with a mug of tea going cold, and he set his laptop on the table and turned the screen toward me. It was a bank document. The kind that doesn't apologize for what it says. There had been a transfer. A large one. $54,000, moved from the account Aunt Rosie had left me into an account I didn't recognize. The date was 14 months earlier. The memo field said, simply, investment loan. I read it twice. Then I said, "That's mine." Nathan nodded. His voice was steady, not gentle, not cold, just even. "The account it went to is tied to Marcus." I cross-referenced the routing number. "It's not a formal loan. There's no note, no repayment schedule, no documentation that it's anything other than a transfer." I sat with that for a long moment. The word loan kept snagging in my mind. Investment loan. Like it had been borrowed for something serious. Like it was coming back. "Did he invest it?" I asked, though I already felt the answer. Nathan opened another tab. He bought a motorcycle in November. Took a trip to Portugal in January with 3 friends. There's a lease on a storage unit for ski equipment. I stared at the screen. $54,000. Aunt Rosie's handwriting on the note, something that lasts. The floor of a future I had been building for 5 years. I didn't cry. I sat very still the way I do when something inside me goes quiet in the worst way. My throat was tight when I finally said, they had to approve it, my parents had to sign off. Nathan's jaw tightened. Yes. Did they tell him to? He turned the laptop back toward himself and opened one more window. He'd found a text exchange, not by hacking anything, not through anything underhanded. Marcus had screenshot something in an old group chat months ago, a joking reference he'd made to our mother about spending my rainy day fund, and she'd responded with a laughing emoji and written back, "Just don't tell her until after the Portugal pictures are posted." He'd shared it in a different conversation with a friend, and that friend had commented publicly on Marcus's Instagram. Nathan had found it just by looking. Sometimes people hide things in plain sight because they've never believed anyone would actually look. I stared at my mother's words. Don't tell her until after the Portugal pictures are posted. She had known it was mine, known it was meant for something real, and she had waited until Marcus had already spent it to let me find out. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay on my side of the bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about Aunt Rosie's hands, the way she smelled like lavender soap and old paperback books, the way she'd pulled me aside at Christmas when I was 17 and said, "Your parents mean well, but you're going to have to build things for yourself, sweetheart, so pay attention and don't let people talk you out of what you've earned." I hadn't listened carefully enough. The next morning, I texted Marcus and asked if he could meet me for coffee. He replied 20 minutes later with sure, and a time, and nothing else. I picked a coffee place near his apartment. Not a family spot. Not somewhere he could feel at home. He arrived 7 minutes late, with his jacket half unzipped and his phone in his hand, and he sat down across from me and said, "What's up?" The way he always did, like the answer couldn't possibly be anything serious. I didn't ease in. "Marcus," I said. "Did you take money from Aunt Rosie's account?" He looked up from his phone. His expression shifted, not to guilt, to something flatter and more practiced. "Where did you hear that?" "Bank transfer," I said. 14 months ago. $54,000. He leaned back in his chair and did a slow exhale through his nose. "You're making it sound like something it wasn't." "What was it?" "A loan," he said. "A short-term thing. I needed capital for an investment and the timing was it was temporary." "There's no repayment plan," I said. "No promissory note." "Nothing." He shrugged, and in that shrug I saw 27 years of being caught and uncharged. "I was going to talk to you about it." "When?" "When I had the money together. Look, Claire, I've had a complicated year financially." The Portugal trip looked fine. Something tightened in his face. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That thing you do where you make me sound like a bad person when you're clearly just upset about something." I looked at him for a moment. He wasn't ashamed. That was the part I hadn't fully prepared myself for. He was inconvenienced. He was mildly annoyed. He looked like a man who had just been held up at a toll booth, not like someone sitting across from his sister, whose future savings he had spent on a vacation. "That money was for me to buy a home," I said quietly. He rolled his eyes once, fast, like he was trying to keep it subtle. "You have Nathan. You're fine." "I'm fine?" "You're a dual-income household. You're not exactly struggling, Claire." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I recognized the logic. It was the same logic my parents used every time Marcus needed something and I was nearby. Claire's fine. Claire's responsible. Claire doesn't need us to worry. It turned out that all those years of being steady and self-sufficient and not causing problems had been quietly building a case for why my things could be taken without consequence. "Are you going to pay it back?" I asked. He picked up his coffee cup. "I need some time." "How much time?" "Don't be like this." I sat back. My spine straightened the way it does when I've finished deciding something. "I'm going to have to involve a lawyer." Marcus set the cup down. "You're going to blow up the family over money." "This isn't about the family," I said. "This is about $54,000 that belong to me." He leaned forward, voice lower now, something sharper moving into it. "You know what? Go ahead. Go ahead and drag this out. See how Mom and Dad react when you decide to make this a whole thing. See who they're going to side with." He sat back again, collected himself, and smiled in a way that didn't reach anything. "I'll reach out when I have a number together." I walked out into the gray March air and stood on the sidewalk for a minute. A woman walked past with a stroller, a bus went by. The city kept moving the way it always did, indifferent and enormous. I didn't feel angry. I felt something quieter than anger. Clear, almost. Nathan and I met with an attorney the following week. She was a small, brisk woman who asked precise questions and took notes in a green notebook and said words like structured restitution and civil demand and fiduciary mismanagement. She explained what we had and what we could do with it. Nathan sat next to me, with his hands folded, and listened to everything she said the same way he listened to everything fully, without performance. When we left her office, he took my hand on the sidewalk and said, "You don't have to go through with this if you don't want to." I thought about Aunt Rosie's note. Something that lasts. "I do," I said. My mother called the day after I'd gone to see Marcus. Her voice had that particular brightness that meant she'd already decided how the conversation was going to go. She said she'd heard I was asking questions about the fund and that she understood it might be confusing and that these financial structures could be complicated to navigate from the outside. I listened to her explain my own inheritance to me like I was a child who had found something in a drawer she wasn't meant to find. When she finished, I said, "Mom, he spent it." A pause. These things have a way of working themselves out. There's $54,000 missing from an account that had my name on it. Claire. Her voice shifted to something firm and gentle at once, the way she used to talk to me when I was 10 and asking why Marcus got to stay up later. Your father and I have always managed things for this family. That's not going to change because you're asking pointed questions. I let the silence go for a moment. The attorney will be in touch, I said. The quiet on her end was different from the quiet at the coffee shop with Marcus. It was the quiet of someone recalculating. You're involving an attorney? She said. Yes. Claire. Her voice dropped, and I could hear underneath the composure something harder and colder. If you do this, you're choosing money over your family. I thought about 30 years of choosing family. Of being easy. Of not causing problems. Of making my bed without being asked and handing things over with both hands and never once demanding proof that the people who were supposed to love me were actually handling my life with care. No, I said quietly. I'm choosing what's mine. She hung up. My 30th birthday was in May. My parents suggested the restaurant. My mother called 3 times about the guest list. She called it a chance to celebrate as a family, which I understood was also her way of managing the narrative, of putting everyone in a room where the social pressure of the occasion kept things smooth. Marcus confirmed he would come. I let all of it happen the way it was happening, and I didn't warn anyone about anything. Nathan knew. The night before the dinner, I asked him once if he was sure. He looked at me the way he does sometimes, steady and direct, like he's reading something written behind my eyes. You've been carrying this for a long time, he said. Not just the money. I didn't answer, because I didn't have to. The restaurant was everything my mother had wanted. Warm lighting, white tablecloths, that chandelier. 32 people at a long table, aunts, cousins, a few close friends, Marcus near my parents at the far end. The kind of gathering that announces itself as happy and makes a certain kind of silence feel like a betrayal. We ate. We laughed at things that didn't quite land. My mother made a small speech about 30 being a turning point, and it was polished and lovely and had nothing to do with me specifically, which had always been her particular skill. Then Nathan stood up. The table quieted the way tables do when a toast is coming. Glasses were lifted slightly in anticipation. My aunt smiled from across the table. I want to say something about Claire, Nathan began, and his voice was perfectly ordinary, which made everything that followed land harder. Specifically about the kind of person she is. Because I think a lot of you know her as the responsible one. The steady one. The one who handles things without making a fuss. He looked around the table. What you might not know is what she's been handling. My mother's glass came down very slowly to the tablecloth. 2 months ago, Nathan said, Claire asked her parents about a savings account her Aunt Rosie left her. $61,000 set aside for a home or a meaningful life moment with Claire's name on the original paperwork. He reached into his jacket pocket and set a single folded page on the table without drama, like he was logging evidence. What she found was that 14 months ago, $54,000 had been transferred from that account to Marcus, with no promissory note, no repayment plan, and no conversation with Claire. The table went from festive to very still. A fork touched a plate somewhere and then stopped. Marcus said, from the far end, voice tight, Nathan, this is not. I found the transfer in the bank records, Nathan said, calm as a closed door. I also found a message. He didn't open his phone theatrically. He had already set up the laptop at the side table, the one nobody had paid attention to. The screen lit up. My mother's text. Don't tell her until after the Portugal pictures are posted. Black text on white background, her name at the top. Someone near the middle of the table let out a breath. My cousin Sarah, who had known me since we were children and who I had never once asked for anything, pressed her hand flat to the table like she needed to feel something solid. Nathan's voice was the same throughout. No anger, no performance. Just the facts laid out the way a structure is laid out, piece by piece, until the shape of it is unmistakable. Claire didn't beg. She didn't threaten anyone. She asked for what was hers and was told not to make it a thing. She was told she was fine. She was told this is how the family works. He paused. Tonight is her 30th birthday. Aunt Rosie left her that money for something that lasts. I think it's important that the people in this room know why that money has to be reclaimed through legal paperwork, and not because Claire is being difficult, but because she was told her whole life that being easy and being good meant that what was hers was available to everyone else. He sat down. For a moment, the table was the quietest thing I had ever been inside. My mother's expression had gone to a place I had never seen on her face before, not anger. Something more unguarded than that, like a wall that has been standing so long, it forgot it was a wall until the moment it wasn't. My father said nothing, he looked at the tablecloth. Marcus's jaw was tight and fixed in the expression I knew, the one that meant he was deciding between several responses and none of them were apologies. My Aunt Carol, my mother's other sister, the one who had been close to Aunt Rosie, looked at my mother from across the table for a long, wordless moment. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were wet. The thing I felt wasn't what I expected. I had expected relief, or satisfaction, or even sadness. Instead, I felt light, the way you feel when you put something very heavy down and realize your arms have been burning for years without your permission. My hand was in my lap and Nathan found it under the table and held it. Someone near the back started speaking, a friend of my mother's who hadn't understood most of the financial detail, and the conversation broke into pieces the way it does when a room has held too much and needs to let it out. But the shape of what had just happened didn't leave the table. You could feel it in the way people talked, careful, conscious, aware of something newly visible. Marcus left before dessert. He said he wasn't feeling well. He kissed my cheek on the way out and I didn't move. My mother came to find me near the end of the evening, when most people had drifted into smaller conversations. She stood beside me at the edge of the room with her arms crossed and her voice very low. "You humiliated this family," she said. I looked at her. I thought about 30 years of that word, family, the way it had functioned as both a thing I belonged to and a set of rules I was supposed to follow. I thought about Aunt Rosie saying, "Pay attention and don't let people talk you out of what you've earned." I told the truth, I said. In front of everyone. "You knew for 14 months, I said. "You could have told me privately. You chose not to." She looked away. Her mouth pressed into the tight line I knew from childhood, the one that came before a verdict. "You'll regret this." I thought about that. I thought about what the alternative looked like. Going on. Being fine. Never asking. Spending the rest of my 30s knowing that the floor of my life had been sold while I was busy, not causing problems. "Maybe," I said, "but I won't regret knowing." She walked away. My father followed a few minutes later without speaking to me. The demand letter had already been drafted. Nathan sent it the following morning. My parents called that same day. Both of them. My mother left a voicemail that was long and shapeless, a lot of words that added up to, "How could you?" and underneath it something almost frightened. My father's message was shorter, the way his punishments always had been. "You want to be independent," he said. "Fine, be independent." Marcus texted me twice. Once to say this is insane. Once to say they're never going to look at you the same way. I stared at that second one for a long time. Then I typed back, "I know. That's part of it." The restitution process was not clean or quick. There were phone calls through attorneys and a negotiation that took longer than it should have, partly because my father kept insisting the transfer had been a family decision and therefore not actionable, which was the kind of argument that sounds like logic until an attorney explains to you what fiduciary duty means in writing. The money came back in 2 payments, the kind of reluctant, compressed restitution that tells you everything about whether someone is sorry or just scared of consequences. The account was restructured. My name was the only name on it. I bought a condo in October. 2nd floor, north-facing windows, a small balcony with room for 2 chairs and a planter, and a 2nd bedroom I am in the process of turning into a reading room the way I always imagined. The paperwork was mine. The down payment was mine. Aunt Rosie's name is on a small framed card on the bookshelf, next to a photo of her at Christmas when I was 9, smelling like lavender soap and looking like a woman who always meant what she said. I don't call my parents the way I used to. The twice-monthly Sunday lunches have not resumed. I'm not dramatic about it. I don't announce it. I've simply stopped filling the space that was being used against me, and the silence that's grown in its place feels less like loss and more like something finally at the right size. My mother sent a birthday card in November. It was a nice card, the kind with a painted landscape on the front and a printed message inside. She signed it "Love as always." I put it on the counter and didn't respond and eventually recycled it, which is not something I would have done before and which felt, honestly, less like cruelty and more like honesty. Marcus texted me in December to say he was in the area and wanted to grab coffee. I said I was busy. He didn't follow up. My cousin Sarah called me about 2 months after the birthday dinner. She was quiet at first, feeling her way into whatever she needed to say. Then she said, "I want you to know I had no idea." Not really. I'd always thought. She paused. I'd always thought you were just very self-contained. Like you didn't need much. I thought about that phrase. Self-contained. The way people use it to mean capable, when what they're really observing is someone who has learned not to let anyone see the places where they're running dry. I didn't need to perform anything for her. I just said, honestly, I didn't either, not until I saw it written down. She asked if we could have lunch sometime. We did, 2 weeks later, and it was easy in a way that things haven't always been in my family, easy the way things are when two people are simply being truthful with each other without managing anything. There's a version of this story where the point is the money. Where what matters is the number in the account, the legal victory, the restitution paid in 2 careful installments. But that's not what stays with me when I think about that year. What stays is Nathan at that table, standing up with no anger in his voice, just facts, just the truth laid out the way a building is laid out, not to impress anyone, but because the structure was real and it deserved to be seen. What stays is Aunt Rosie's note. Something that lasts. What stays is the feeling, on the day I signed the paperwork for the condo, of sitting at a table with my name on everything that mattered and nobody telling me what I was allowed to ask for. My father's version of what happened is that I chose a fight over a family. My mother's version is that I aired private things in public and called it justice. Marcus's version I don't fully know, and I find that I mind less and less. My version is simpler. I spent 30 years being easy. I made my bed without being asked. I turned things in early. I said okay when I meant please notice me. I didn't ask to see proof, because in my family, asking to see proof was the same as accusing someone of lying. And then one day, I looked at a number on a screen and realized that being easy had a price and that I had been paying it for a very long time, and that the people who benefited from it had been very careful never to send me a bill. I'm not angry anymore. That surprised me how quickly the anger finished its work and left. What's underneath it is quieter and more permanent. It's the knowledge that I can build things that hold. That I can ask to see the paperwork. That being calm is not the same as being compliant, and that if someone can only love you when you're not asking questions, what they love is not you. It's the shape you make when you stay quiet. I have a reading room now. It has a blue chair and a lamp that throws warm light and a shelf full of books I've been meaning to get to for years. Some evenings, when the city outside is doing its low, steady hum and Nathan is in the kitchen and the apartment smells like dinner, I sit in that chair and I think about my aunt. I think she would have liked the chair. I think she would have said, "Good. You paid attention. You didn't let them." And she would have been right.